Today, we're going to talk about a better way to make iced filter coffee. Now, there's two schools of thought when it comes to making delicious cold coffee drinks. There's cold brew, that's coffee that is brewed with cold or room temperature water. And then there is coffee that's brewed hot and chilled and diluted by ice. And that's what this is going to be. That's iced filter coffee. And I've made a video about this in the past, a video using a pour over to get really great results. And I think I used the pour over because iced filter coffee really was popular in cafes. They've got big batch brewers. That was how the technique kind of became popular. Now, there is obviously a downside to everything. This might be a better and easier technique. It is, I'll say now, a little bit slower. What I'll do is I'll walk you through some of the experiments I did to kind of develop this recipe. Then I'll go into the recipe itself, walk you through step by step. And then to finish up, we'll cover the kind of different tips and tricks you might think about when using different immersion brewers. It's kind of embarrassing to me that I didn't think of this video sooner. It's actually a really obvious solution to a problem. But I also think about the fact that over these last few years, we've made loads of videos and we've learned some things along the way. And I kind of want to highlight the moments of learning for me that happened in the past. And this all should have started with a video I made a while back called Immersion Brewing is Better Than Percolation Brewing. Now, iced filter coffee has a fundamental challenge. Because we're going to dilute it when we chill it with the ice, we're going to use less water to brew our coffee with. Water, when we brew, is kind of a solvent. And when we have less solvent, it's harder to dissolve the flavors from the grounds. When we compared percolation brewing and immersion brewing, especially at finer grind settings, we saw immersion did a better job, a more even job of extracting the coffee than percolation did. When you get really fine and you're trying to pass water through a bed of coffee, it's more likely to channel, where there are kind of quick routes through that over-extract while everything else kind of under-extracts. It tastes uneven, sour and bitter at the same time. It's not ideal. That typically doesn't happen in immersion brewing. And that was where I thought, oh, this is going to be the solution to the problem of iced filter coffee. But then I started to experiment some more. And it takes me to another video. We did one called Understanding the AeroPress, where we experimented with all sorts of variables in trying to get to an ultimate AeroPress technique. And one of them was steep time. Now, I said in that video that my 4-minute steep was a little bit better than my 2-minute steep. And I didn't think it was good enough to justify the additional time. I wanted lots of people to be able to use this as a daily driver recipe. But Jonathan Gagnier picked on that. He is a noted coffee person, astrophysicist, author of The Physics of Filter Coffee. Excellent, linked down below, you should check it out. He said, well, hang on a second, if 4 minutes was better than 2, well, what about 6, 8, and 10? Then he developed the AeroPress technique now known as the Gagnier press, where you steep your AeroPress for 10 minutes. The results are very delicious. Now, I'm not saying you have to steep this for 10 minutes. What I am saying, though, is while we're going to use a longer steep to get a better extraction, there's no kind of stress about hitting an exact brew time. If you miss this by a minute, you're good. If you miss it by 3 minutes, you're good. This is a very tolerant technique, especially when it comes to time. As long as you cross a threshold of, say, 4 to 5 minutes, somewhere there, depending on whether it's a light roast or a dark roast, you're going to be fine. And that made me think of something else. If my brew time is longer, is my resulting liquid cooler? So I did some simple comparisons. I brewed a pour over and checked the temperature of the liquid coming out the bottom of that from a sort of short iced pour over style brew and compared it to a 6-7 minute steep time in something like a Clever. And yeah, the liquid coming out that would be hitting the ice was notably cooler. I mean, a few degrees Celsius, but still notably cooler. Why would you care about this? Well, the cooler the liquid is, the less ice you're going to need to use to chill it down. And the less ice you need, the more you can turn that back into brew water. You can sort of trade it back into the brew, and that will help with your extraction again. The one other video I want to highlight that we made in the past that I realized was kind of useful here was a video called The Magic of Salt in Coffee. For most people, adding a tiny amount of salt to coffee decreases the perceived bitterness. Now, often this is a great trick when you're served really terrible coffee, but cold coffee has a higher level of perceived bitterness. And I realized that Saline, salt, was a great solution here. It's really easy to make up. You can buy a cheap dropper like this. You're looking at an 80-20 ratio, so you could do, say, 5 grams of salt in 20 grams of water, dissolve it. And here we're going to be using 2, 3, maybe 4 drops, depending on your preferences and how bitter the coffee itself is going to be. What we're going to end up with is this, a coffee full of complexity because we brewed it hot and we did a good job with the extraction, but it is cool and refreshing and delicious. One other quick note, I would recommend lighter, fruitier, juicier coffees because they do so well as iced filter coffee. Washed Kenyan coffees, washed Ethiopian coffees in particular, very, very delicious, though pretty much any coffee is going to taste great. And this It should be full of clarity, sweetness, should be a good time. Perfect. Start the day on a hot sunny day, a refreshing drink halfway through, or a little pick-me-up before you hit the gym. Speaking of which, it's time now for an ad for this video's sponsor, which is Copilot.
Copilot is a fitness app that pairs you one-to-one with an online personal trainer. And over the last 4 months, when it comes to working towards my goals, it's been incredibly helpful. Now, I'm not trying to run a marathon. My goals are around making exercise a regular and really enjoyable part of my life. And Copilot has helped in 3 main ways. 1, accountability. Having someone I'm accountable to, someone motivating me, has been really useful. 2, flexibility. My schedule changes all the time and I'm not stuck working around my trainer's schedule, they just work around mine. And 3, personalization. You start with a call with your trainer and you talk through the kind of exercise you want to do, talk about your goals, talk about the kind of time you have available, and they build out a personalized plan for you. You get to the gym, you don't have to think about it, you're just going to do it. There's no analysis paralysis. Secondly, if you're traveling or doing something different, well, no problem. Drop them a message and you can change up your routine. 3, personally, over time, I've wanted to add in different kinds of exercise, not just resistance work, a little bit more steady state cardio. I just drop my trainer a message, say what kind of workouts I want, and they're there waiting for me. It's been really enjoyable and really helpful. And if you want to try Copilot, well, you can click the link in the description down below or use the QR code on screen and you can get 14 days free to trial having your own expert fitness and health coach. Thanks to Copilot for sponsoring this video.
Let's get into the recipe. We're going to start with the dose of coffee used, and this is where things get, for me, a little bit tricky to explain. I'm going to talk about brewing water as kind of the defining thing because we often talk about a dose of coffee per litre of brewing water. And if you're brewing a pour over, you might use 60 grams per litre of water. So if you're brewing half a litre, you'd use 30 grams. In case the maths is still a little bit confusing, we'll leave some example recipes around, say, 1 typical cup of coffee, 2, 3, 4. So you can work with that and hopefully get a bit more guidance that way. This would brew what I think would be 2 cups of coffee for people. We're going to do that, but we're going to split our 500 grams of brewing water up into brewing water and ice. But we're going to change our dose quite dramatically. We're not going to use 30 grams, we're going to use 37.5 grams, which calculates out at 75 grams per litre. There's 2 reasons for this. 1, I want a slightly heavier dose to compensate for any dilution that happens of the finished cold coffee in the glass while I'm drinking it. And 2, technical, and I'll link a video that explains this, but immersion brews produce, for a matching extraction, slightly weaker coffee than pour-over brews, and so we need to compensate for that too. As for the grind size itself, it is really pretty fine. It's not espresso fine. What I'll do is I'll show you espresso fine, this grind setting, and then let's say a 2-cup pour-over kind of setting. So it's probably a little bit closer to the pour-over than it is to espresso, but it is a notably finer grind setting because we can use that with an immersion brew without a worry about channeling. Now, we're going to use the Clever today for our brew method. We'll talk about different techniques and switch arounds with that. The Clever is a great immersion brewer. It's one of my favorites. It's got a great deal of capacity, which I think is helpful. It's easy to use and it's inexpensive. It does benefit from putting water in first and then coffee. Not all immersion brew methods work that way. I'll touch on it in a second, but that's what we're going to do here. Now, our brew water. We're going to carve it up 2/3 hot, 1/3 cold. With 500 grams of water, that's not the neatest thing in the world, so we'll call it about 330 grams of brew water, and then we'll have about 170 grams of ice in this particular case. You could go up or down 5 grams, nothing bad is going to happen. You know, you can kind of be a little rough with these measurements, it's okay. But approximately 2/3 hot, 1/3 iced. You can obviously preheat your brewer, that's helpful because you're trying to brew as hot as you can, get as much extraction as you can. I'm going to put 330 grams in here. You can obviously use a teaspoon to mix. If you happen to have a needle distribution tool, these are great. But for this, let me be clear, not essential, just kind of useful. I'm going to ask you to steep this for 5 minutes. If you really can't wait, then 4 is okay. If you miss that, if you go to 6 by mistake, 7, it's going to be okay. It is still going to be very delicious, so don't worry about that. Pro tip, do not get your ice out until you actually need it. That means kind of when you get to 4 minutes, go and get some ice at that point, just so the ice is as cold as possible and not gently melting in your carafe while it's waiting for your coffee to brew. Again, it's a little slow, Patience is required. I promise it will be rewarded. There will be some ice left. Do give it a stir. Probably using the wrong spoon for this. Hang on. Something a bit more appropriate. Just to make sure we chill it down as fast as possible. And when pretty much all the ice is gone, we're ready to go. Don't forget your saline. 2-3 drops is plenty. If you've got fancy ice, feel free to ice your glass in a fancy way. And you will have a delicious little beverage. Tastes like Kenyan coffee, which it is. Juicy, fruity, nice kind of black fruits in there, little acidity, lovely texture, lovely sweetness. That's a very enjoyable drink that's easy to make if you're willing to invest a little bit in terms of time. I did say I touch on some other brewers along the way, and it seems worth mentioning a few bits and pieces about them. So first up is the Harrier Switch. It's another steep and release brewer. It's one I really like. Obviously, it's a kind of traditional cone shape as opposed to the milliliter shape of the Clever. Its capacity is a little bit smaller. At these higher ratios, I've had some success up to about 30 grams of coffee, which would then mean 260 grams of water and 140 grams of ice in there as well. The good thing about this is there's loads of paper options available. You can get fast flowing papers, slower flowing papers should you want that. It means with, say, a fast flowing paper, you could do coffee first, water second, but in every other situation, I think hot water first, coffee second is generally my preference, but it's a super versatile and wonderful little brewer for making this kind of coffee with. Next up, the AeroPress. I know some people don't see it as a pure immersion brewer because you are pressing water through coffee at one point, but because so much of the extraction is done in kind of immersion conditions, I think it's an immersion brewer. This is great. Obviously, the capacity, again, a little bit limited, but there is the new AeroPress XL. This is sort of comically large. We're still testing and playing around with it. This, we've had success brewing 50 grams of coffee to about 440 grams of water with 220 grams of ice down below. Hopefully these ratios are now making more and more sense. But yeah, this has been good for a big brew, bigger than anything else we've really tested. You might think that this would be the solution to a really big brew, but there's a downside when it comes to the cafetiere. Cafetieres, French presses are great. You know I love them. I think they make delicious, delicious coffee. But when it comes to iced filtered coffee, they have a significant downside. They're metal filtered coffee, which means you have a lot of suspended material, basically tiny little pieces of coffee floating around in the beverage. And while my recommended technique reduces that quite dramatically, they're still there. It's kind of unfiltered coffee. And when you chill coffee down, you experience a lot more bitterness from those little tiny pieces. If you're absolutely in a kind of pinch and you have to use this, maybe go a little bit heavier on the saline. You can filter a French press brew, but I really don't recommend it. It'll be very slow and very frustrating. You pour this through a V60 filter, it'll just clog and choke and take a really long time. You can get good results filtering it through cloth. I really like cloth brewers, but there's so much work to maintain that cloth, keep it tasting good and clean and fresh, that I don't really recommend it. So the coffee from this is very good, but when it comes to a chilled, finished drink, I think you do need, ideally, a paper filter involved there, just to minimize the bitterness, give you a bit more clarity. I think it makes, ultimately, a better drink. And so whatever the weather, if you have an infusion brewer at home, I hope you give this technique a try. And if you do, well, let me know down in the comments below. And let me know if you think I've missed out one particular infusion brewer that should have been included here, whether there's some tips or tricks that you want to share with your infusion brewing at home. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you again to Copilot for sponsoring this video. The link's in the description, the QR code's on screen right now. But for now, I'll say thank you so much for watching. And I hope you have a great day.